Hello, everybody, and welcome back into another post-game show here on the Hockey Writers YouTube channel and covering the Edmonton Oilers Colorado Avalanche series here, game 2. And this time it wasn't a huge score on both sides, 4-0. Avalanche shut out the Edmonton Oilers. And Nazem Kadri has 3 assists. Rantanen scores again. 4 different goal scorers, but basically it was all from one line. So Rantanen, Lehkonen, and basically that line was, and then Josh Manson threw a goal in there as well. So joined in again by Kerry Collins, Jim Parsons. We'll start with you, Jim. How was this game? Your impressions on this game 2 that now Oilers have to go back to Edmonton down 2-0?
Well, this is a mix of like two kind of performances for me. I thought the Oilers actually played a little better in the first period. So they came after the first game and had a better system. They played a little more defensively structured. They let it get away at the end of the game. Gary was saying, the shots totals between the first and second period, they had almost as many shots in the first as it did in the last two. But it was just gaps. I was saying to you guys, it's just gaps in their thinking and focus for 2-3 minutes at a time. And there was that one stretch in 3 minutes there in the second, which is typically a pretty good period for the Oilers. Where Colorado scored 3 goals. And I mean, that was it, right? Like when that happened and they just sort of stopped playing for 3 minutes and they got into we can't get it out of our own zone. And unfortunately, Nurse was on the ice for all of those goals and soft breakouts, soft dump outs, just strange positioning. He just kind of lost focus for 3 minutes and the Colorado Avalanche killed him. And that's essentially what you can't do against this team, right? Like they're so skilled and they're so fast. If you have those gaps in your mental approach to the game, things like that, you're going to get creamed. And that's kind of what happened. I didn't think the Oilers actually played an awful hockey game. I just didn't think they had it for portions of the game. And when they didn't, Colorado saw it and they took advantage of it. And that's kind of what killed the Oilers tonight. So we'll see if they can have a different game at home, but this just wasn't really the best performance for the Oilers, even though I actually kind of thought offensively, not great, but defensively and overall, not a terrible hockey game.
Well, I mean, the first period, it was 0-0 after the first period, and that's not something that we're used to, and the thing is, both teams kind of, played a game that was like, okay, this is how this game's going to be, maybe a 1-1 game finally, or something like that, ending 2-1 or something, but, ended up that 3-minute gap or something like that, and all of a sudden it's 3-0. And, basically the game's done, like you said. So, Kerry, what do you think about the Avalanche's game? I mean, they had that 3-minute stretch. I mean, basically it was all from one line. They just kept pressuring and getting goals. Kadri, 3 assists. What do you think about the Avalanche's performance in this one?
Yeah, I mean, that line was great. I mean, it was Kadri, Lehkonen, and Rantanen, and it, responsible essentially for the first 3 goals. Manson gets one, but Kadri and Lehkonen assisted on it. And, that was a huge one. I mean, you have a 0-0. It seems like they're like locked into this tight game. And then all of a sudden just 2-0. And, and then, then 2 minutes later, it's 3-0. And we sort of talked about that goal before we came on here, and that Mikko Rantanen goal, it's just kind of unlucky. Duncan Keith's just getting off the ice right as there's a turnover, and then Darnell Nurse is kind of like, oh crap, I'm sort of caught in no man's land here, and they bury it. And that was huge with the way Francouz was playing. 3 goals looked like a lot. It wasn't like in game 1 where the 3 goals you still felt like, well, it's 6-3, but there's still like 35 minutes left of this game. Maybe they could overcome this. It just didn't seem like at that point, it's not even, it's kind of early in the second period. You've got that point where you feel like, geez, this is going to be a big hill to climb for them. And I mean, I thought the defense was good for Colorado. I thought Josh Manson had a heck of a game. And it just seemed like, once they got that third one, it was kind of like, oh no, this might be insurmountable, which 2 days ago, we never, ever would have said that.
Well, I mean, the way that game was going, like they said, no lead is safe. So, I mean, Edmonton definitely probably, you wouldn't know that they couldn't come back. I mean, they can score goals. And, Jim, I want to ask you about, Connor McDavid. I don't know if he was bad in this game, but it seemed like now they're matching. Oh, well, they were matching game 1 too, but Cale Makar and Devon Taves. Are they doing anything special to really kind of limit his chances? Or, how do you think of his game in game 2 here?
Well, Colorado's definitely quicker than any team that the Oilers have played, especially on defense. Like there was one in the breakout in the first where Connor McDavid early in the game had a chance to go wide on Cale Makar, and he just made a really smart play. He kept up with him. His speed was there, and he just poked the puck away. I mean, there's no team that the Oilers have played so far that Connor McDavid can't just spin around or skate around or do whatever he wants to with. And Colorado's kind of showing that that's not necessarily the case here. Like they're just really fast. So they have the skill and the speed to not always keep up with McDavid, because I did think, even though he only had a couple shots on goal and no points, obviously, but he was still at times the most dangerous player on the ice. It's just, they did a good job tonight. Colorado did a good job. This was one of the first times that I really kind of felt like the Oilers did not have it offensively. In every other game, and Kerry was saying, you always got this feeling that the no game. I mean, we talked about game 1, it was 7-3, and you didn't think the Oilers were out of it, right? It's 3-0. You'd think the Oilers are thinking, you know what, we can come back. And you just didn't get that feeling tonight. They just didn't seem to have it. They were sort of discombobulated. They weren't making great zone passes out of their own zone. They just kind of didn't have it, right? And McDavid was trying, God bless him, skating around like crazy and stuff. But Colorado sticks were really good. Their speed was good. They were kind of playing inside his jersey all night. They just handcuffed him. And this is going to happen every once in a while. Just hopefully, for the Oilers' sake, that Colorado hasn't figured something out, right? Like this is maybe the way that you play him, and you can sort of limit him. You can't, like I said before, you can't stop him, but maybe you can just slow him down a little bit. And if they figure that out, it could be problematic for Edmonton.
Yeah, I mean, and Leon Draisaitl's streak ends too with his assist in every game or something like that. That was that streak. So, I mean, it happens. I mean, games like this happen over the course of a regular season. I mean, playoffs, it's just, you sometimes just don't have it, like you said. Before we move on here, I want to talk about, because Yamamoto was hurt, didn't return to the game. If he doesn't return, if he can't play game 3, who do you think steps into the lineup for him?
If you're asking me, there's a couple things that I would do now that they're down 2-0 in the series. I would actually consider Dylan Holloway as an option for the Oilers, because he's fast. He can play a top 6 role. He would be a good accent player. Now he's not played any games for the Oilers at all. So throwing him in there 2-0 down in a playoff series is asking a lot of somebody. But I also believe the Oilers should probably limit and go back 11-7. I just think they're not using all their forwards anyway. Their fourth line isn't playing a lot. They need to get the combination. Like, I was surprised how little Draisaitl and McDavid played tonight together, right? So I don't know. I might try something different, right? I don't know if there's anybody sitting out, whether it's Devon Shore, those guys that are going to come in and really spark it. Maybe Holloway can. He's fast, right? Like, he can keep up with Colorado, if not outskate a lot of the players on that team. So maybe that's a spark. The Oilers, they need something. They need a spark of some kind. This is the first real series where the Oilers kind of look like they're not sure what to do. And so you kind of maybe need to limit Nurse's minutes a little by bringing in the 11-7, and then put somebody like Holloway in there. See what you get, right? I mean, at this point, you got to do something, right? You're down the first time the Oilers have been down 2-0 in a series. So they got to spark something somehow.
Well, I mean, Kerry, Colorado's been in this position before. I believe they were up 2-0 against St. Louis, going to St. Louis. If I'm not right, if I'm wrong, is that how
St. Louis won the second game? It was last year against Vegas. They were up 2-0.
There was one
point. It looked like in the second round last year against Vegas, they looked like, hey, we just took Vegas's best punch and beat them, and they were up 2-0, and they never won again. And they weren't even. I mean, they barely got close in 3 of those games. So this is familiar. Because St. Louis won game 2 4-1.
Right, that's right.
But it's kind of like this game, though. Like you said, you always feel like Edmonton can score. It's 3-0, but they get that high sticking penalty on Kadri, right? 4 or 5 minutes left in the second. And I think there was a sense of like, okay, here we go. Here's where they get one. and it's 3-1. And then I don't even think they got a shot on target because I think really the only guy that took a shot was Barry from the point, and both of them were blocked. They just couldn't get anything going on that. It was kind of like, that was kind of their chance to get just a little bit of like back, a little bit of momentum just back on their side, and they just didn't get it. And then they're going in against the goalie that's been pretty good. You really only had a half dozen shots on goal in the second period. Are you going to get 3 goals or 4 in the third period? It just kind of seemed like, okay, this one's probably done. It's just, and Colorado, finished them, at least they didn't let them back in like they did in game 1. They let St. Louis back into a couple of games too. The game 1 in overtime, they were ahead, and, they tied it up super late, had that 3-goal lead in game 5 and blew it. And it was like, are they going to do this again? But they just completely didn't. They just kept the foot on the gas and said, let's just keep the steamroller going here. But I think it's a different animal going on the road. A lot of people thought, oh, Edmonton's got to get one here. You're going to have to win one in Colorado sooner or later if you're Edmonton, but they just can't be totally, demoralized by this or anything like that. I agree with Jim. If they go 11-7, that fourth line is just not playing a lot of minutes. And if you're going to throw Connor out there for 25 minutes a night anyway, double shift him, like, what do you got to lose? And I was just surprised at how well Francouz played. This is a tough spot. He's been in playoff games before, but this is a tough team to shut out for sure. And that was a pretty good game by a goalie that just sort of, got plopped in there last night or Tuesday night. And then he's got to start again, under uncertain terms. So it's a pretty good game for him.
Yeah. Well, on subject of goaltending, Jim, I'm going to ask this question again because Smith allowed 4 goals. Do you put Koskinen in game 3, or do you just stick with Smith and hope that he kind of can again bounce back? Because he looked pretty good in the first period.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Oilers are going to stick with Mike Smith. Of the 4 goals tonight, really the first one was kind of on him. Like the Kadri one was sort of squeaked through him. It was a shot that came out of that. The other ones, I don't know that I would necessarily blame him. Even the last one where he didn't have his glove on in the power play, like, you know what I mean? Like, it just wasn't, it wasn't the best performance that Mike Smith ever had, but for a long time, he kept them in this game, right? It was nothing at the end of the first, essentially because Mike Smith made some really nice saves. So, and you're going home, right? So you're in Edmonton. Mike Smith's going to be energized. The team's going to be energized. Now, if they don't start well and they don't win game 3, then I'm not sure I go back to Mike Smith, but I think they probably will. He's the guy. He's been designated the starter here, and they're going home. I think it would be kind of unfair to actually pull him at home in game 3 when it hasn't really been his fault. Like, he hasn't made any crazy glaring mistakes like he's made in the other series, right? Like, he's not played wonderful, but he's played decent, and he hasn't done anything stupid. So why would you punish him, say, at this point? Because I don't know that these are his fault. I think the Oilers just haven't played well in front of him. And a lot of shorthanded opportunities tonight. 7 power plays for Colorado, right? So
there you go.
Yeah, you say that in game 1 too. In game 1, I thought he played pretty well in that first period, and they scored 3 goals, and it was kind of like, okay, but I don't think he's been bad, but I think there's been some mistakes in front of him for sure. The fourth goal, he doesn't have his glove on. He's distracted. He got most of that puck still. It went over by this much. So, it's just been trouble. They generated nothing those last 40 minutes in front of him. So, I don't know what else he's going to do. It was just like I said, that third goal was kind of bad luck. They get a 2-on-1. The Kadri goal he probably could have had, but it's like, it's just tough when they're not generating that many shots in front of him. You can't, you're not going to, it's hard to shut out Colorado too. Just like I said, it's hard to shut out Edmonton. You're going to need to score some goals.
I think if you pull Mike Smith, you're relieving the defensemen of their responsibility. That's what I think. If you do that, you're sending the wrong message to your defensemen that, hey, you guys, it wasn't your fault. It was the goalie. And I don't think it is. I think it's been the defenseman. I think it's been the overall team defense in their own zone has not been good enough. And if you pull the goalie, you're telling them, you know what, it's not your fault. It's the goalie. We'll just put another goalie in. I think that's the wrong message to send.
That's a fair point. Yeah. So adjustments for game 3. I mean, Colorado, Kerry, do you think they have to make any adjustments or kind of just keep it going and just the way they played in game 2 and just move it to Edmonton?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure he's got to keep Rantanen on that line still. He can't really move that guy anymore. He's finally, got the fire lit underneath him. I don't think they really changed that much. Of course, it's different in the playoffs with last change, getting the option for last change at home and stuff. That probably opens things up more a little bit for guys like McDavid and Draisaitl. It's just they still got to figure out ways to bottle up. They bottled up the top line pretty well. I mean, that last goal is a power play goal. It's a little bit different. There's different guys on the ice for Colorado for sure, but it's just like that. This really showed the depth scoring. I mean, we talked before, in the series preview, one of the X factors was Mikko Rantanen. He's got to get going. Well, he's going now, and he's looked pretty good, and they're up 2-0. So they've got to find a way to shore up some of that stuff. And we just talked at length about how the defensemen have been struggling. So something, they've got to figure out something. But for Colorado, if I'm them, I don't really change anything. I see what you've done and you see what you've gotten from those top 2 lines, and it looks pretty good so far. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing is they're not going to be able to have the same matchups. I mean, we'll see how that changes, but Jim, they everyone says, it's not bad until you lose the game at home. So they haven't lost a game at home. So what adjustments do they have to make they win both in Edmonton. It's a different series. So what do you think?
Sure. Well, we talked about the 11-7, and I do believe that they should try that. I'm not sure who they go with, whether it's Philip Broberg or Chris Russell. I'd be tempted to go with Broberg because of the offensive punch and the speed he adds to the lineup. But at the same time, Russell's a veteran and he's been there and he can play smarter defensive hockey than maybe Broberg would be able to, being that he's only played one playoff game for the Oilers so far. So I would do that. I would also make sure that I played McDavid and Draisaitl together. I'm not sure why Woodcroft split it up, maybe just to give a different look and try something else. But I think you're down 2-0. You got to go with what works. I don't always think that's the best format for the Oilers long term. I think you want those guys on different lines and get 2 lines going. But at this point now, you need a good start. You need to get a 1-2-3-0 lead early, and I think those guys give you to get the best shot together. So whether it's Kane, Draisaitl, and McDavid, or Hyman, Draisaitl, and McDavid, whatever it's got to be, and we'll find out what's going on with Yamamoto here. But yeah, I would put those guys together. Just try to get as many shots on Francouz as you can now, because he's got the shutout, and you need to dent that armor early. And if they don't do that, I'm not sure what they're looking at. So I would put those guys together for sure. And then I would just make sure you have the options on defense, because I don't think Nurse looks right. I've said it before, and I think there's just something off about him. I don't want to say injury is the excuse, because I don't think he's played terribly well either, but I have no idea how much the injury is hampering him. So he doesn't look right to me. So I would limit his minutes and get another guy in there.
Yeah, all good adjustments. We'll see if what adjustments they do make, because like playoffs are a game. That's what game of adjustments, and every game is different. And we'll see which team kind of comes out on top. Now that it's shifted to Edmonton, it could be a different series. We'll see after game 3. So thanks, Kerry. Thanks, Jim, for coming on another post-game show. We'll be back after game 3, and we'll see what we're talking about, either a 3-0 lead with Colorado on the cusp, or Edmonton's back in this series. So we'll see you then. And thank you for watching another post-game show here.